it's Selvan here, and today let's talk about the Enhancement Shaman. And Enhancement is all about spamming keys and lots of management. Long are past the days of the good old Wind Fury, wasn't it amazing? But it still exists to some degree, and is still very much what you can expect from Enhancement. So before we get to the good stuff, the absolute basics. The core gameplay of Enhancement will end up being about managing your resource, Maelstrom. So the basic idea would be to build it by using abilities like Rockbiter, while at the same time keep enhances active like Flame Tongue weapon. Your spec isn't called Enhancement for anything. On top of that, there's passive Maelstrom weapon, making your auto attacks generate 5 Maelstrom, along with Wind Fury attacks, proccing from your auto attacks, doing 2 extra hits. On a chance, depending on mastery, generating even more Maelstrom. Then you just spend it on Storm Strike, which is your main DPS ability, while getting another proc called Stormbringer, proccing from any weapon attack, so Wind Fury attacks have a pretty good chance of proccing it. On top, Mastery also boosts its proc chance. It reduces the cost of Storm Strike by 50%, plus triggers no cooldown, so you can use 2 in a row. Then there's Lava Lash, which is gonna work as your filler and Maelstrom dump ability, has no cooldown and does reasonable damage. There's also Storm Lash, which is just a poor man replacement for the old Wind Fury totem, boosting 2 group members plus yourself by giving off a little extra damage from your attacks. As for cooldowns, are simply gonna boost those already present abilities like Doom Winds, boosting Wind Fury attacks, and Spirit Wolves, generating extra Maelstrom. But all of those abilities together formulate this gameplay surrounding procs, with a reasonable amount of RNG to it, but largely based around Maelstrom management. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but before that, let's look at your talents, which will dictate what type of gameplay you want for your character. In the first tier, there's Landslide, which is currently one of your best performing talents. Every time you use Rockbiter, which you're gonna use quite frequently anyway, will give you 8% agility, which is a nice flat damage increase. Keeping it up is pretty easy, so is a good boost overall. That said, the other options have their own niche. Hot Hands is giving you a proc, while Flame Tongue is active, doubling Lava Lash's damage, and is free. Now, it's not a bad choice and comes close to Landslide, but it's only worth to take if you have the Lego Wrists, which is also going to increase its damage by 50%, while both Flame Tongue and Frostbrand, another enhanced weapon ability that you have, are active. So it's a good combo, and you should use this talent if no other more powerful Lego is available to you. It will change your rotation a bit, but I'll go over that later. As for Windsong, is the least useful out of them, but still has its niche. It does reasonable amount of damage, enhances your weapons to attack 30% faster, so it's not a bad improvement. Remember that faster attack speed equals more Wind Fury procs, and in turn Stormbringer procs and Maelstrom, so combos well with Doomwind's CD and the later talent Ascendance. So it can technically work if you need extra burst, but in general use Landslide or Hot Hand with the Lego will be better choices. Next is just utility picks. Fair Lunge basically gives you a charge-like ability. It's probably what you want to run with the most, but don't be afraid to spec into something like Windrush Totem, which I do love so much, providing every friendly with 60% movement increase. So great when in need of group mobility, and you want to be useful. Remember that as Shamans, you are the king of utility. As for Rainfall, it provides another interesting utility ability. It basically gives you an AoE eel that you can put down on the ground, and abilities like Storm Strike increase its duration. So again, as its use if everyone is going to be hugged together and you want to bring some extra utility. In general though, you're gonna lose a global cooldown and potential damage, so take that in consideration. Falling tier Lightning Surge Totem is a must. I generally don't like just saying pick this talent, but yeah, this is such circumstance where the other choices have very little use. It's a great stun indeed, but take in mind it actually takes 1 to 2 seconds to actually proc the stun, so you have to time it right sometimes, but is great for midi plus. The others I found very little use, but I guess you can find some niche for it. Fourth tier, there's the good old Lightning Shield, which I have so much nostalgia from. Still works as it always did, putting a shield around yourself and does damage passively. Currently though, it is very weak. Ancestral Swiftness gives you 6% haste, so it's practically a must as well. Haste is one of your most important stats, so this is just a fantastic addition no matter what point you really are with your gear. As for Hailstorm, adds its own unique use as well. Often you want to pick this in combination with Hot Hands. Why? Because you really only want to use it with the Lego Wrists, which basically commands you to use Frostbrand and Flame Tongue together. Hailstorm actually provides damage to the Frostbrand Enhance, which otherwise would not. However, if you're lacking haste for whatever the reason, consider taking Swiftness instead anyway. Next tier actually provides more interesting choices. Tempest gives your Stormbringer proc a 40% extra chance to make that Storm Strike crit. So it's pretty simple, nothing will really change on your thought process, and one of the most powerful choices in this tier. However, if you have no Legos or tier sets that directly boost Storm Strike in any other way, Overcharge is a viable choice and comes pretty close to Tempest. Lightning Bolt is just a range ability that you have, barely doing any damage, and you really only want to use it when you can't reach the enemy. This talent then makes it fit during your normal rotation, costing 40 Maelstrom plus triggering a cooldown for 9 seconds or so, and doing a crazy 1500% more damage. So yeah, hits pretty goddamn hard. However, it will change your rotation priority plus add another ability for you to manage, so don't combo it with Hot Hand for an example, or you will get too cluttered. Empowered Stormlash is another good passive option, boosting that Stormlash damage that I mentioned earlier by 50% plus benefits one more person, and is actually a useful talent now, even though it might not seem like it, and even comes close to Tempest. Again, if no specific Legos or tier sets are available to you. So depending on your gear, you can choose whatever. As for the talent like Ring, it does give you Tempest for free, so you can still pick Overcharge or Stormlash, but take what I said in consideration. Next tier will again give you interesting choices that highly impact your gameplay. Crashing Storm is again an easy passive option, boosting your Crash Lightning, which is your main AoE and cleave, by leaving some lightning splooge on the ground where it will tickle the enemies away. The damage is decent, so take it if you want to keep an easy rotation. As for Sundering, I found very little use outside of Mythic Plus, but even there can be a little bit dodgy. Basically is an AoE ability of sorts. The damage is fine, but the main crux of it is that it knockbacks enemies. Now that can be really good or really bad. More often than not, you just gonna move mobs away from cleave and AoE, and you don't want to be that guy, right? However, you can use it to the benefit of your group by knocking mobs away from Sanguine Puddles or interrupt casts, so use it at your own discretion. As for Fury of Air, also gives you a new ability. Basically an AoE ability, but perfectly usable in single targets, something that the other choices don't offer great benefit. It surrounds your character, costing 3 Maelstrom every second, and will never drop as long as you keep Maelstrom up. meaning the general use for this talent would be to keep it up 100% of the time by perfectly managing your Maelstrom. So gear will obviously take a toll here, primarily haste and your Lego hands that we're gonna talk more in a bit, but obviously your own skill as well. In general, it's not that hard to keep it up, but can get a bit hairy at times, so again, I'll leave that up to you. Besides that, it offers an interesting twist to your rotation, making it, in my opinion, more fun as you never really get a rest. If you played a Frost DK with a Breath build or a Shadow Priest, it's kinda like that, but much less resource intensive, plus it lasts for the entirety of the fight. Well, if you're doing it right. And lastly, Boulder Fist is a very weak choice currently, improving your Rockbiter by reducing the cooldown and increasing the damage, but again, not worthwhile taking it as of this moment. And it doesn't really change your rotation if for some reason happens to be the best talent in the next patch. Now, Ascendance and Earthen Spike are pretty even in terms of raw DPS increase. Ascendance will give you another DPS cooldown, improving your Storm Strike to Wind Strike, reducing the cost by 80% plus the cooldown, and bypasses armor, meaning does more damage and is on a 30-yard range. On top, your auto attacks also become ranged and do more damage. Double, in fact. Now, this is a wonderful DPS cooldown to really get your numbers high at the beginning of fights, especially in combo with your other cooldowns like Doom Winds and Bloodlust. As for Earthen Spike, will provide a much more sustained type of ability, does reasonable damage but puts a debuff on the target, increasing your physical and nature damage by 30%, so practically most of your abilities, on a 20-second cooldown. So every 10 seconds you're gonna get this damage increase, which is really great for sustained fights, like raid bosses, but does require more management than Ascendance. In the end though, you can choose either of those two, however, Legos and gear will change this slightly. If you have your best in slot hands Lego providing a free Ascendance on proc, taking Ascendance itself as a talent probably won't be that worthwhile anymore, and you will be better off with Earthen Spike, where, if lucky, you could use both at the same time. This is why taking Fury of Air is a much easier choice with this Lego, as you're gonna get this free Ascendance every once in a while, where you can just pull Maelstrom since the cost of Storm Strike is highly reduced. Without any of that gearing, I'll leave that choice up to you. So now for the rotation, and don't worry, I will talk about all of your priorities, including all of those different talent choices. Now, let's just start with just a regular rotation with no cooldowns and just gradually go through all the different talent choices, then DPS cooldowns, and finalize with AoE. The first thing you want to do on enhancements is to obviously set up your buffs and start building Maelstrom. To do that, you're gonna start with Rockbiter. Now, isn't your priority #1 ability, but if you have Landslide talented, it's a must to keep it up. Overall, it's pretty easy since you can use Rockbiter frequently for Maelstrom, but there will be times where you really don't need to, so keep an eye on Landslide so it won't never drop. Then you would use your Flame Tongue weapon to get the other buff. Remember that both Rockbiter and Flame Tongue have 10-yard range, so you can use it as you are walking towards mobs if you don't have Feral Lunge. Then you should have enough Maelstrom from Rockbiter and auto attacks to use your Storm Strike. If you get the Stormbringer proc afterwards, as in an extra Storm Strike, you can use it right away while mixing in Rockbiters in case you need extra Maelstrom to continue using Storm Strike. If you get no Storm Strike procs and is on a cooldown, you can finally start using Lava Lash. Now, it has no cooldown and costs 30 Maelstrom, and to use it properly, it does require some management. If you're new to it, you probably just spam Lava Lash, but that's not really what you want to do. Lava Lash, with this build anyway, works as a simple filler or dump ability when you have nothing else to click, and yes, even having less priority than Rockbiter, unless you are about to overcap Maelstrom, of course. Remember that Flame Tongue is leaving a debuff that is increasing your next Lava Lash damage by 2% each weapon hits, so the more you delay, the more damage you will do anyway. Optimally, you only want to use Lava Lash above 60 Maelstrom. And why? Well, you can get a Stormbringer proc at any second, meaning you always want to be prepared to use that proc followed by a regular Storm Strike. It costs 40 Maelstrom, while the proc costs 20, meaning you want to be near this 60 Maelstrom as often as you can, so you are ready to click those 2 Storm Strikes, okay? Makes sense? Then you just keep it up. Remember to refresh Landslide, but again, should happen naturally, and refreshing Flame Tongue below 4.5 seconds. If you have nothing to click and saving Maelstrom for a Storm Strike, well, you can just use a Flame Tongue at any point. It does some damage, plus you are saving yourself ahead of time a global cooldown to refresh it. So as you can see, it really is all about managing with a lot of spamming of keys, depending how much procs and resources you get. Most of your damage is gonna come from Storm Strike while being buffed by your other abilities, so make sure to manage that well. Now what about if you're using other talents like Fury of Air? Well, you just use it after that first Rock Biter and Flame Tongue and do the best of your ability to keep it up. The use of Lava Lash now needs to be extra careful so you don't go empty of Maelstrom and let it drop. So using around 80 Maelstrom would be safer. It's really gonna depend on the moments and how many Rock Biter charges you have left and your character really, so try to make the best decision. If you're using Hot Hands and you get a proc, well, you will no longer need to maintain Landslide and the proc itself takes priority over a Storm Strike, because you don't want to lose out on potential Hot Hand procs. If you're using Hailstorm along with it, make sure when you use Flame Tongue to also use Frostbrand and keep it up as well. And finally, if it's overcharged for those lightning bolts, follows the same idea as Hot Hands. It takes priority above Storm Strike and you want to use it whenever you are above 40 Maelstrom. Again, this will require extra management and you will barely use Lava Lashes at this point. That's why you don't want to combo Overcharge with neither Hot Hands and Fury of Air. And all the rest stay the same and you could just continue with your normal rotation. Now for Windsung and Earthen Spike, I'll count that as a DPS cooldown, so let's go over them now. So for your cooldowns, when to use Doom Winds and Spirit Wolves. Well, for Spirit Wolves is pretty straightforward. It's gonna give you extra Maelstrom and do some damage. However, there's one small thing you can do. Your trait called Alpha Wolf makes your Spirit Wolves cleave nearby targets when you use Crash Lightning for 8 seconds. Now, even on single target, it is a DPS increase, so make sure when you pop your Spirit Wolves to use the Crash Lightning right after and another after 8 seconds to keep it up the buff. It's not a must, but can improve your deeps. As for Doom Winds, there's also some preparation you want for it. You obviously want to pop Landslide and Flame Tongue first and Fury of Air. The same thing follows if you're using Spirit Wolves, along with Frostbrand, again depending on your talents. Now optimally, the time when you use your Doom Winds is not right off the bat, but wait to consume a Stormbringer proc. Why? Because every time you use that proc, you're gonna get a buff called Wind Strikes, increasing your attack speed by 12%, which is a pretty big deal when you take into account that Doom Winds is gonna make you proc Wind Fury with every auto attack and deal 200% more damage, and in turn grant you more Stormbringer procs. So yeah, that speed increase is a really good improvement. So keep your normal rotation and then whenever you see a proc, you pop Doom Winds and use a Storm Strike. That said, you don't want to delay it for too long, as you will still want to combo it with Spirit Wolves or Ascendants that we're gonna talk next. So my advice is to wait for about 5 seconds, then if you get a proc or not, use it. Then you just keep your normal rotation. So if you have Ascendants, well again use it after popping Landslide, Flame Tongue and Fury of Air. And Spirit Wolves, then just go on the Storm Strike and Wind Strike spam. The cooldown is really short, so you can mix a Lava Lash if you get no proc while you wait for another Wind Strike. The cost is highly reduced and the Spirit Wolves will give you Maelstrom, so you will get an abundance of it. So you are in pure spam mode. Just remember to refresh Landslide during its duration, as it's easily forgettable, but still is your priority number 1. The same follows for Flame Tongue. As for Doom Winds also boosts its damage. That's why you only want to wait for about 5 seconds for the proc that I just said, so you can still fit those 6 seconds of Doom Winds during the Ascendance window. As for using your cooldowns mid-fight, everything will stay the same. All of your cooldowns line up pretty nicely since they have flat to 1 to 2 to 3 minute cooldowns. Just keep in mind when you do use them to have all of your buffs refreshed, as in Landslide and Flame Tongue and Frostbrand if you're using Hailstorm, and the proc for Doom Winds. It's very important. As for Windsong, just treat it like it's an extra Flame Tongue like Enhance. It lasts for 20 seconds and combos really well with Doom Winds and Ascendance, and they will line up pretty nicely. And lastly, Earthen Spike will, like most talent choices, add another layer of management, like I said before. So how do you want to use it? Well, in the beginning, you want to use it after your Landslide and Flame Tongue and Fury of Air and Spirit Wolves. Then you just skip with your normal rotation, and then with the same thing goes with the proc and the Doom Winds. Again, the duration is just 10 seconds of the Earthen Spike debuff. It's better just to wait 3 to 4 seconds so you can fit its entire duration during its window. Using it mid-fight, you want to use it whenever it comes off cooldown. You might be tempted to try and combo it with Storm Strike procs, but you don't want to do that, and just use it as it's available so it lines up nicely with your other cooldowns once they are ready to go as well. And that pretty much covers this side of things. Now let's finalize with AoE. Well, AoE in Enhancement is not really AoE, but just cleave. You really don't have any traditional AoE abilities besides Fury of Air if you have a talented, meaning your rotation stays exactly the same. Crash Lightning is where all of your AoE will come from, doing some cleaving damage, plus makes your Storm Strike and Lavalash cleave in front of you. So again, Storm Strike will be the king of damage. A couple of priorities will change though, but not many. Landslide still is your priority number 1 ability, so that's what you want to use first. Then a Flame Tongue to get the Enhance buff, then Fury of Air if you're using it, then Crash Lightning to get the cleave buff, then just keep your normal rotation really. The only thing to keep in mind is that if it's just 2 targets, you just use Crash Lightning solely for the cleave buff. If it's 3 or more, you can use Crash Lightning on a cooldown for that little extra damage, taking priority alongside your other enhances, and keep a normal rotation. Okay. As for your cooldowns, they are pretty much single target based, so you can still use them of course, like Doom Winds, so you get more Storm Strike for cleaves, or Spirit Wolves, which will actually cleave with you when you do a Crash Lightning, and their damage is actually pretty decent. If you're using Stun Ring, just use when it's available. And that covers AoE, nothing really changes much from your normal single target rotation. In terms of tier sets, there is some changes to your rotation, which is about Crash Lightning. With the current tier 20 from Toss, it makes it so you want to use a Crash Lightning in your normal rotation, even if it's single target, by keeping up that creep buff of 5%. It's pretty straightforward, you just need to fit it in whenever you need to refresh the buff. So it would take priority as your other enhances. Very similar to your multi-target rotation, so they even blend more. As for the new tier set from Antoros, doesn't really seem to change much. And that covers everything in your rotations. Now let's talk more about the advanced subjects. So, as I said before, enhancement really comes down to management, either by your procs or Maelstrom, especially when you take the step to use Fury of Air, which really adds a new layer to your gameplay, at least when you're not that good geared. So the best way I can put this is, if you want to slowly master Enhance, is to do it by steps. So the first small step you want to take is pretty basic, which is on your buffs or enhances. Maintaining them is your priority number 1, and never letting them drop, especially during CD windows like Ascendance, as is a very common mistake that you want to avoid. Step 2 will be on your procs, Lavalash and cooldowns. As I said previously, you always need to be prepared to use those Storm Strikes, but always having that nice amount of Maelstrom and being ready to use them if you get a proc. On the Lava Lash's side is to learn to prevent yourself from spamming it. Stop thinking of it as this spammable ability, but as a filler ability that you only want to use to get rid of some Maelstrom and when you have no Storm Strikes available. The other thing is on your Rock Batter. Managing it properly will actually help you as well, by always having one charge sticking so you maximize its uses. In terms of cooldowns, you want to make the most out of them as you can. Nothing on them really changes your gameplay, only enhances them, but it's still something you want to have perfect control over, especially Doomwinds and Earthen Spike. Then step 3 is overall Maelstrom management, which will be the key to mastering the spec when to use Lava Lashes, Storm Strike procs, Rock Biters, while at the same time keep all of your other abilities going, like your damage buffs and Fury of Air. When you reach that point is when you will see your DPS really starting to shine. Now obviously nothing is possible without gear, so what about stats? Well, there is one breakpoint that you want to meet, which is close to 27% haste. That simply allows you to get an extra global cooldown inside of your Doomwind's duration. Although not a must, it's something that you want to try and reach if possible, but don't go out of your way to get it. In general though, haste and mastery are pretty even stat-wise. In Sims, you're probably gonna see haste to be the most valuable until 27%, then devaluing to mastery from that point. Haste fits perfectly with your overall fast playstyle. Reducing the global cooldowns and faster attacks are great for enhancement, while a damage increase from mastery to all of your element-based abilities is an ever-increased boost to your damage. But as with everything, stat-wise will change from character to character, and that was simply my experience. Simming will always be the way to go to know what's the best for you. Other stats like agility comes pretty close to a haste and mastery. Crits isn't the best, but is still pretty good to use, so don't put it to the side completely, and the same follows for versatility. In terms of Legos, I already mentioned the most meaningful ones. The hands are currently extremely good by giving off that free ascendance and allowing you to pick Earthen Spike safely. Then the ring is also extremely good for that flat damage increase that is pretty easily achievable in Enhancement. You then have the chest as the best AoE Lego and the wrists, which are a viable choice for the Lava Lash build, although not the best build currently. All the other Legos are currently worse or don't really need explaining. In terms of add-ons, I greatly recommend Tell Me When that I use, or weak auras to track all of your buffs. I even set a Lava Lash aura for myself by simply telling me I can use it whenever I'm above 60 Maelstrom. So check in the description on how to get that. So guys, that covers it all. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching, subscribe and like for more videos, and as always, have a fantastic day, and I will see you all next time.